The Migraine and Headache Program. Easy said, not so easy done. Identifying your personal migraine triggers can be quite difficult. For some of us, our triggers are almost impossible to spot. For sure, if you can spot one or two triggers, then it can make a world of difference. I should know. When I first started out trying to cure my migraines, I tried everything imaginable. And triggers seemed to me like a good place to start. Turned out it was. I found a guide to triggers online, with some very helpful advice on how to spot and deal with my own. The guide was created by a gentleman by the name of Christian Goodman. I worked through his guide and two things happened. I realized I had a couple of primary triggers, mostly around posture and stress. As triggers, these two are pretty difficult to address, especially the stress. But at least I knew. At least I had something I could do about my migraines. I now had a tool that I could use to reduce the effects of my migraines. True, I was never able to prevent them, but if I got things right, they were sometimes less intense. Given the awfulness of my migraines, anything was better than nothing. It was genuinely uplifting to suddenly have some control over what was happening to me, even if I couldn't actually stop it. But here's the thing. Managing triggers is very difficult. First, they're hard to identify, and I suspect that I still had one or two unidentified triggers for my own migraines. Often, you think something is a trigger, but it isn't, it's actually just a symptom. Then, some triggers are just very difficult to manage. If your trigger is in some of the food you eat, then if you're lucky enough to be able to identify that food, then you can simply stop eating it. It's more difficult if it's a whole food group, dairy, say, or wheat. But it's still doable. You can cut these things out. But what if your trigger is something harder to get a hold of? More difficult to properly address? Background stress perhaps. Nervousness. Low mood. Energy loss. This kind of stuff is normal. It's part of everyday life for everybody who has a job or a family, or a job and a family. For some people, a level of anxiety or stress is just their normal default state. It's part of their makeup. For almost everyone, we find that such triggers are a common part of our lives at some point. Whenever things get tough, when we work harder than usual, or when we miss out on some sleep, that's when the trigger comes into play. Managing them is extremely difficult. Read more The Migraine and Headache Program, please click link in description below.